Can a bad strategy destroy the trust between drivers and team in just one weekend? Because that's exactly what happened in Qatar. How is it possible that two champions end up furious and sunk after decisions that seem amateurish? The history of the 2025 Qatar Grand Prix is not written only with times and positions. Ultimately, what happened in Lusail was an emotional, technical, and organizational earthquake within a team with a mythical name, but a fractured soul: Ferrari. The race was a crude mirror that allowed no pretense or excuses, and reflected with surgical precision everything that is wrong in Maranello. It was not a simple sporting defeat. It was a decomposition in slow motion that everyone saw, including the protagonists themselves, especially Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, who held absolutely nothing back. The atmosphere in the paddock was already tense since Friday. There was nervousness. Unlike other teams that arrived at the Qatar track with clear roadmaps, Ferrari landed with doubts. There was uncertainty about the behavior of the SF25 under high degradation conditions, and even in the simulators the team had not been able to establish a setup base that offered confidence. From free practice it was obvious that something was not right. The radio between Leclerc and his engineer was already a warning. Questions without answers, data that did not add up, and visibly uncoordinated communication. All this worsened when competitive activity began. In qualifying, the first blow came brutally. Hamilton, one of the most experienced and strategic drivers on the grid, was eliminated in Q1. The reason was a basic planning error. Ferrari sent him too early for his final lap. While the track improved lap by lap, a normal phenomenon in desert circuits like Lusail due to the progressive cleaning of the layout, the Britain's SF25 was already in slow partials, with no possibility of response. It was not bad luck, but rather a lack of contextual reading. In Formula One, these types of errors pay dearly. But when you are Ferrari and your driver is Hamilton, that price becomes public humiliation. And the classification was only the prologue. The truly alarming thing happened in the sprint race, where Ferrari decided to break the park firm to modify the setup of Hamilton's car. The result was catastrophic. Far from improving, the car became even more unstable, with unpredictable balance in medium-speed corners, and without sufficient traction on corner exits. Hamilton finished the sprint in a devastating P17, and on the radio he uttered one of the harshest phrases that can be remembered from his mouth. "How is it possible that we have made the car worse?" This sentence, said out of the blue, carried a ton of disappointment. It reflected not only frustration with the result, but also a loss of confidence in the technical judgment of those who design their strategy and tune their machine. But what really turned this GP into hell was Sunday. The Lusail circuit, already known for its physical demands and abrasive asphalt, forced the FIA to impose a mandatory two-stop strategy due to extreme tire wear. This required surgical planning, down to the second calculation, and precision at every pit stop. Ferrari, however, improvised. There was no clarity on whether they should attack or conserve. The radio was a constant box this lap, followed by doubts or changes of mind. Leclerc complained in the middle of the race about not understanding the purpose of his intermediate stint. Hamilton, for his part, was stuck in traffic after every stop, without clean air, without rhythm, without options. While other teams advanced positions thanks to strategic management, the SF25s were diluted among mid-grid cars. All this, of course, ended up exploding off the track. In the mixed zone, both drivers used language rarely heard at Ferrari. They talked about chaos, confusion, avoidable mistakes. Leclerc assured that the team does not know how to react when the car does not respond. Hamilton said directly that the engineers are lost. They were unfiltered words, reflecting the fatigue of two pilots who feel that their talent is being wasted. There is no greater sign of crisis in a Formula One team than the breakdown of trust between driver and engineering. And that's what happened in Qatar. What should have been an opportunity to re-emerge became a painful reminder that today's Ferrari, despite its resources and history, is trapped in a dynamic of structural errors, deeper than any aerodynamic problem or tire failure. The question now is not whether Ferrari can improve, but whether it can survive its own self-destructive inertia before Leclerc and Hamilton tire completely. In Formula One, a poorly executed strategy can cost you positions. But when the strategy is not even coherent, what you lose is something much more serious: credibility as an elite team. That is exactly what happened with Ferrari at the 2025 Qatar Grand Prix. What we witnessed was not simply a series of bad decisions, but a chain of improvisations that made it clear that there was no solid plan since Friday. The Scuderia acted as if it did not understand either the behavior of its own car or the dynamic conditions of the race. It was as if the strategists were making decisions from a simulator with outdated data. It all started with one of the most basic mistakes possible: underestimating the evolution of the track in the classification. On circuits like Lusail, the grip improves drastically with each lap. It's basic. It's elementary. However, Ferrari decided to send Lewis Hamilton onto the track in Q1 too early for his final fastest lap. While everyone was waiting until the last minute to make the most of the conditions, Hamilton was riding on a track that was still green, without the optimal level of grip. The result was devastating. Eliminated in Q1, 18th position. An error of that caliber, committed by a team with as many resources as Ferrari, cannot be justified by the pressure of the moment. It is a clear symptom of internal lack of coordination and lack of synchronization between the data on the pit wall and decisions in real time. The second layer of this disaster came with the sprint session. Desperate to find a solution to the car's poor balance, the engineers made a high-risk decision: break the park firm regulations and modify the configuration of Hamilton's car. This move involves changing the car after qualifying, which automatically forces the driver to start from the pit lane. It's a gamble that is only taken if you have clear evidence that the change can radically improve performance. But here comes the most serious thing: there was no improvement. The new setup made the car's behavior worse. Hamilton described the SF25 as undrivable, with a rear axle that seemed disconnected from the front axle. Every corner was a fight to maintain control. He finished the race in P17 without rhythm, without confidence, without direction. But the climax of the disaster occurred on Sunday. Due to high tire wear on the abrasive Lusail asphalt, the FIA imposed a minimum two-stop strategy. That, in itself, complicated things. It required meticulous planning, knowing that every second lost in the pits or misjudged stint could set off a chain reaction. Instead, Ferrari opted for chaotic management. Instead of anticipating race behavior, they reacted late. The stops were late, the tire changes were poorly synchronized, and the most worrying thing: the pilots were receiving contradictory information over the radio. Charles Leclerc was a victim of this disconnect. In one of his stints, the Monegasque asked several times about the pace of the cars he was fighting with, only to receive vague answers. Meanwhile, it was evident that he was being overcut by rivals who had stopped a lap earlier and were gaining vital seconds on fresher tires. What should have been a battle for the top 5 became a defense to stay in the points. Hamilton had it no better. After his first stop, he was stuck behind much slower cars. Any undercut attempt was sabotaged by traffic miscalculations. There was no position protection, there was no anticipation of the movements of the rest. The Briton was simply devoured by the average tide of the peloton, resigned to riding in no man's land for much of the Grand Prix. And here the big question arises: why did a team with so many resources fail at the most basic level? The answer is uncomfortable. What happened in Qatar was not simply a strategic failure. It was a manifestation of a broken team from an operational point of view. There is no clear decision-making philosophy. Engineers appear to be operating in silos with no integration between data analysis, degradation prediction, and tactical execution in the race. Communication between pit wall and drivers has lost fluidity. Decisions are being made more out of desperation than logic. Worse yet, statements after the race indicate that this trend is not new. Leclerc has mentioned on more than one occasion that, when things don't go well, we don't know how to react. Hamilton, for his part, was blunt: "We made the car worse." I don't understand how that decision was reached. And that is the phrase that encapsulates the whole problem. It is not that the decisions were risky. It's about that they didn't have logic. In the case of Charles Leclerc in Qatar, that loyalty seemed to reach its limit. His body language when he got out of the car, his tone of voice in interviews, the way he avoided the media in the paddock. Everything spoke of an emotionally exhausted driver. The words he used were precise, surgical, but also full of disappointment. "We didn't know how to react. There is no clarity in decision-making." It wasn't simply frustration over a bad race, it was disappointment toward a system that has failed him time and time again. On the other side of the garage, Lewis Hamilton is experiencing firsthand what so many others have experienced in Maranello. In Qatar, he said it bluntly: "The engineers are lost." That statement, from the mouth of a 7-time world champion, is no coincidence. It is a declaration of war on the lack of technical direction, tactical disorganization, and a culture that seems not to have learned from its historical mistakes. The 2025 Qatar Grand Prix not only left a technical scar on Ferrari, it left an emotional wound that will take much longer to heal. It was the type of race that marks a before and after. An event that, for many within the team and millions outside of it, laid bare the reality that many refuse to accept. Ferrari is not competing. He is surviving. And in a sport where thousands define championships, survival is not enough. It is synonymous with irrelevance. Leave it in the comments what you think about all this.